Hey guys, this is Chad from band Bombshell, and I'm here backstage at Little Big Fest with William Elliott Whitmore.
How's it going?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
So,
it's fancy backstage here.
It's Valhalla back here, isn't it? So, one of the things that I've always gone on record as saying is that while Slipknot is probably the most commercially successful act to come out of Iowa, the Americana scene is always where Iowa's had its most recognizable kind of sound. Growing up, did that influence you at all? Were you listening to a lot of local Americana artists?
I actually didn't discover a lot of that stuff till later.
Yeah.
Lived in a pretty rural setting growing up, and so just to discover records was not always an easy thing. So I actually didn't find out about like Greg Brown and Dave Zolo and I had known of like Patrick Hazel and a couple of those guys, but Joe and Vicky Price and things like that I kind of found out about later, and it was really refreshing and really cool to find that stuff, because that stuff that's not going to be at your local record store. Well, where I grew up, the local record store was called Disc Jockey.
Yeah.
And it was in the mall,
right?
And it was where you could go and get, they had some stuff, but they wouldn't have had cool stuff like that, So I discovered that stuff later. And it was really, really wonderful to see all these Iowa people doing these great things. And that was even before Slipknot and everything,
right.
And then that kind of came later. But and now I've kind of gotten to know some of those guys, and I'm just proud to be from a place that has such a strong musical tradition.
Right.
And
when you started, you were almost more kind of a, I don't want to go as far as call it like a post-punk sound, but I mean you were definitely a little harder edge to your stuff, and then you've kind of eased into you relaxed into more of a kind of a traditional Americana sound with your last couple albums. Has that been a conscious decision, or is it just kind of where you're at in your life?
Well, part of it's where I'm at, but I mean even my first record, it was pretty stripped down and banjo driven.
Right.
But before that, I was definitely into. I always wanted to be in a punk band. When I was like 18, I wanted to be in a band that sounded like Minor Threat, or like The Descendants or something like that. But I never could get it. I never could get it off the ground, and so I kind of decided to go back to my roots and kind of go back to the roots music sound that I always liked. But I kind of came up in the punk scene. I didn't come up in like the coffee house scene or anything. That's the only way I knew how to get shows, was these punks doing shows like here in Des Moines at the Botanical Center, if you remember those shows, or like in Iowa City we would do basement shows and house shows and things, and it was kind of the punk scene, for lack of a better term, that was doing that. So that's kind of how I came up, playing my banjo in front of these punks and stuff. I kind of came in through the side door doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm always ready to try something different. I really enjoy that kind of music still, but I realized a long time ago that that's not my destiny.
Yeah.
I'll leave that up to the professionals.
Right.
And I'll just play the banjo.
Now, because of that kind of punk background and kind of where you came from, do you ever get tired of the comparisons to Hank III?
No, that's I don't get tired of that. That's a good compliment. I feel like, I feel like he's doing some good stuff, and he's kind of embraced his country roots, obviously, but he plays metal and he plays punk and he plays whatever he wants. I kind of admire that. I've never met that dude, but I would take any comparison. I would take that as a compliment. But I don't know if I don't know what his upbringing was or how he came into it, but I would take that as a compliment, I guess.
Now, like you mentioned, you kind of grew up, in a very rural setting. You've always lived on a farm. In fact, you still live on your, on a family farm.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, with a lot of your songwriting, especially with this last couple albums, that rural background has been obviously very important to you. What is it about kind of that blue collar, rural life in the Iowa, lifestyle that you think, is so important to people and connects with people through your music?
Well, it always amazes me when I go somewhere like New York City or LA, and people do feel, it seems like they do connect to it in a way, and I don't know why, but I can only write about what I know, and that's growing up on a farm, and that's kind of what I like to write about, the rural setting, and blue collar people. So it always amazes me when I go to somewhere like Brooklyn and play, and people can relate to it, you know.
Yeah.
But if I had grown up somewhere, I mean, I always say this, but if I had grown up in LA, I would, you know, I'd probably sound like Bad Religion or whatever. But I like how a person's environment shapes what they do, kind of.
Right.
And, you know, like Jay-Z writing about Brooklyn or writing about New York, and he does it really well. So I like that idea that you kind of, your environment shapes you in a way. So my environment definitely shaped me musically anyway, and just that work ethic. And I mean, I treat music like I would any job. You know, work hard and do your best, and show up on time.
And kind of to that end, then, what's your writing process like? I mean, are you kind of always in that mode, or do you have to set aside some time and say, okay, this is where I'm going to sit down and knock this out?
I try to be in that mode as often as I can. In fact, I carry my little booklet in case anything good occurs to me. I can write it down and use it for a song. But it is important to set aside time too. And same with any art. You know, it doesn't always strike like lightning. Sometimes you got to sit and coax it out. You know. So yeah, I've realized that I got to take a little time each day to sit and really write, and I feel like that's helped, that discipline, like go at it like a job, you know, sit down and do it, and whether it yields any results or not is another thing, but and then sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes something does strike you and you're like, oh, that's a line, I need to build a song around that. So it's kind of different every time.
Yeah, great. Guys, this is Chad from Little Big Fest with William Elliott Whitmore.
Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Yep, right on. Thank you.